What's up, Liron here, and today I'm gonna teach you how I mix browns. And the reason I'm doing this is because I was asked recently about how to mix browns, and it seems like people are unaware of the fact that I do everything with my primary colors. Okay, I don't use them just for blue, red, orange, yellow, purple, etc. and grays. I also use them for the browns. So today I'm gonna show you how to mix those browns and then how to push the color bias towards bluer browns, redder browns, yellower browns, and make it look more interesting. This is a really useful skill that I think you'll find very helpful in making interesting shadows and rich textures and so on. Okay, so let's get started. So first off, let's talk about primary colors. And it is a common knowledge that if you're using perfect primaries, you'll get a gray. And let me show it to you. So I'm using not even perfect primaries, but I've got here a bit of French ultramarine, and here I have a bit of a Parylene red. These two alone can create a nice gray, but it still has a bit of a purple feeling to it. But the moment I add just a little bit of yellow, we get this gray, okay? Now maybe even a bit more yellow, and we get this nice neutralized gray. But together with grays, the primary colors can also mix browns, and this is exactly what I'm gonna show you in this video. So let's get started. And a brown, I'm gonna just say it flat out, is a dirty orange. So let's start actually with an orange. Let's not even start with primary color. So we have here the quinacridone burnt orange. Maybe a bit hard to see, but now you'll be able to see it on the palette. And I'm gonna take a leap of faith and kind of say that a brown is a dirty orange. So here we have a bit of an orange. Now let's dirty it up. And the best way to dirty it up is with blue. Why? Because orange contains red and yellow. So I'm gonna get a bit of French ultramarine. And here you see I'm starting to make it a little dirtier, a little more muted, and we get basically this kind of a brown. We can do this also on the palette, so let me show you. Now, because the quinacridone burnt orange has quite a lot of yellow in it, you may get something that even resembles a bit of green, okay? Depending on what blue you're gonna use. So this is a nice little brown, looks a bit maybe like umber, maybe has a hint of green in it. Now let me show you what happens when I mix it with phthalo blue, okay? So a bit of a different blue. So we have here some more orange, quinacridone burnt orange, and then I add a bit of the phthalo blue, and you see this one feels even a little more green than the previous one. Okay, and that is because the phthalo blue has a strong feeling of green to it. It's much more similar, it's cooler. So it has more yellow, it's more green, and this is the result. So just different browns. Now, it's important to remember that color is relative. So these two together makes this look more like orange. But if we place this, for example, next to a bright orange, you see the difference. Now it kind of looks like brown. You see it's all very relative. Okay, values are also relative, so you have to remember that and keep that in mind. Okay, so let me show you some more mixes. This time we're gonna do with 3 primaries. Okay, so I'm gonna start first with the red. I'm gonna overpower whatever was in here. So a bit of red, a bit of the nickel azo yellow. This will give us orange. Okay, so here's a bit of orange. It's a bit dirtier because the wells are dirty, which is perfectly fine. I don't mind that at all. But when I add a bit of blue to these mixes, I'll start getting what seems to be a kind of a brown. Okay, so same thing, same method, same approach, and I get a bit of a brown. Okay, let's play around with phthalo blue also. Let's use the other mix. So a bit of phthalo blue, a bit of red, and a bit of yellow. Now it needs more red and yellow, and especially more red, I would say, to become brown. Okay, now let's add a bit of water so we can see what it looks like. So you see it's kind of a gray muted brown. If we add more red, we're gonna get it to look a bit more, maybe also more yellow, and we get a bit more of a traditional brown, okay? So you can play around with this. So here we come to my next point, which is color biases. Your browns can be biased towards blue, towards red, towards yellow, and towards other colors. For example, again, this looked like a brown a second ago. Now it looks like a green, especially with all of these warm colors. Okay, so what we're gonna do is just practice pushing the bias. Okay, the reason I'm doing this video is again because I was asked about this, and it's not so obvious. People assume that I mix everything with my primaries, but then the browns I use maybe an umber or a burnt sienna, but that's not the case. I do everything with my primary colors. So let's start with trying to achieve a bit of a blue bias. So I'm gonna use red, yellow, a bit of everything really. Let's start with a lot of red and a lot of yellow, okay? And this will give us almost an orange, but it is a bit muted, so it is kind of brown. Now I'm gonna add a bit of blue to that, and you see how it gets a little cooler. Let's add a bit more. This is the French ultramarine I'm adding, and you can see this is a bit more of a blue biased brown. You can see it's a bit cooler. I don't even want to say necessarily blue bias, but let's just use cooler. And it is a brown, but it is cooler. It looks more like, this may look more like umber actually. I'm not a big expert on umbers and all of those, but I do know that House Umber is a house in Game of Thrones, but I believe they're more red. But in any case, this is you can see it's a bit more cool than these examples, okay? Now let's try and push the red bias. And this is actually a really good exercise in starting to discern very subtle color changes. And it's important while doing this to be aware that there's always optical illusions going on and our perception is limited. We have a lot of limitations as humans. We don't see everything as clearly and as cleanly as we could. So again, red, a bit of yellow, a bit of blue, but this time we're trying really to push it towards the red, okay? So now you see we get a bit of a kind of red-brown, I would say. So this is clearly more towards the red. It actually makes this look even cooler than it looked just a second ago, but it does tempt me to try and push it to be a little more blue than I did before. So let's see here. I want to go back to the blue just for a moment. You see now this is more of a blue. And you could argue it's a gray, you could argue it's many things. But I look at it as kind of a brown, okay? Now let's go back, and this time let's try and push the yellow bias. So a lot of yellow, just to get started. Yellow is easily overpowered by other colors, so we're already kind of there. So this is kind of an orange, dirty orange. I'm gonna add just a touch of blue. It's funny, the moment I put the blue in, it actually looks a bit green, probably to your eyes. Let's try and push it back to what it was. A bit more of a traditional brown, and then add a bit of yellow. And you can see we get all these kind of maybe even resemblances of ochre. And I'm gonna hold up the paper in just a moment up close so you can actually see how these biases work. Let's do that. Let me show it to you up close. So let's get rid of this for a moment. And by the way, look at the nice mixtures on the palette, just up close. Here I have the Perlin red. Here I have the Nicolazo yellow, this is the French ultramarine, this is the phthalo blue, and here's the quinacridone burnt orange. So let me show it to you up close what we've got. So we started with mixing all primaries to show you how it can create this kind of a gray, but then if you push it more towards the red-yellow, you get a bit more of a brown. And again, this brown has a lot of biases. This one is a bit more green. This one originally looked very orange, but then we added this one, and now it looks much more muted. Then I showed you how I create those different browns just from 3 primaries. And then here we try to push the primary biases, so a bit more towards the blue. And hopefully you can see this. It's very nuanced, but I think it comes through in the camera. Here it's more blue, here it's more red, and here it's a bit more yellow and even green, you could say. When compared to the other ones, it looks a bit green. And again, hopefully that comes through. I may just snap a photo and also crop it into the video just to make sure that you can see, because a photo works a little better than video. But hopefully that gives you an idea of how I mix my browns. It's very straightforward. It's the easiest approach. All you have to think about is basically temperature and the primary colors. And what I do when I paint outside is I look at a color and I think to myself, is it more towards red? Is it more towards blue? And then I try and emulate that. And whatever happens, happens really. So this is why I like this approach, and I hope you'll give this a try as well. And now let's wrap up this video. So this is it for this one. And here is once again the final result. Now, I want you to remember one important thing, and that is it's all contextual, okay? What appears to be red at some setting may suddenly look even blue. It really depends on the environment, the context, and how it is relative to the surrounding components. There's also reflected light. There's a lot of things going on, especially in scenes. There are a lot of things going on, so you want to pay attention to that. And another useful thing really is the biases, like to push the brown into a more of a blue, or more of a red, or more of a yellow. That can really create a lot of interest in your paintings. So I hope you enjoyed this one, and if you have, don't forget to give it a like. This really helps me to promote my videos, and also subscribe if you still haven't. I have a lot of other tutorials and demonstrations like this one, and I will talk to you again in another vid real soon.